Cop was really a film made for television. It wasn't made for theatrical. And it was part of a series, I think once again, David Gerber. It was a series of either hour and a half or 2-hour movies, I believe. Once again, interesting. But I have nothing to say. I don't walk away with any great memories from it.
Did you work with your husband on that, James Vickery?
No, he was in Born. Maybe he was. Was he in it? Good for you. No, I had no idea. So he was in that. Good, excellent. So I'm trying to think of who the director was then. Probably somebody that knew him from New York, because he was in Born Free. Did a small part in Born Free with me also. So he came over, of course, and spent the year over there.
The Miracle Worker, the 1979 TV
Miracle
movie.
Worker was something else that was interesting. And the reason it was interesting was because we did it as a play first. Because Melissa Gilbert, I don't think she had never done a play. But we went to Palm Beach and did a play of The Miracle Worker. Then we came back and went to a studio in Studio City and rehearsed a movie of the week, which made it even more interesting. Having never done anything like it before and having never done anything like it again, it was a very interesting way to do things. And she was very good in the part. Marvelous in the part.
How did things change once you went from stage to screen?
Well, the whole script, basically. I mean, they had to write a film script instead of a play script.
Was it already written when you were doing the play?
I think they were working on it, yeah. So it was totally, two different scripts. But a lot of it was the same, and so a lot of the things that needed to be worked out that would have taken forever and ever to get, particularly all the signing and all of the things that she needed to work on, all got worked out on the stage, so we didn't have to take the time in rehearsal for the actual film.
Now you played Kate Keller, her mother.
I did indeed.
Did you, in looking at the role, did you actually look at any history or anything like that to create that character?
You don't really have to. I needed to learn to sign, which I have since forgotten, but I did have to learn to sign. It's a mother. There really isn't much else. It's an interesting part. Really is an interesting part. Pat Neal played it in the film. And Pat Neal used to live down the street from us. She was right on South Water Street, just 2 blocks away.
And Patty Duke was in it as well.
Patty Duke was indeed in it, playing the part of the teacher. And was very good at that. Marvelous at that, yeah.
In 1983, you became the president of the Television Academy.
I did.
Can you talk about that? First of all, what was your involvement with the Television Academy before that point?
I had been induced by a friend to be the actor representative, who was the actress representative in my day. I think there were 2 of us. I think there was 2 from each. You could probably tell me, but I think it's 2 from each that are on the board of directors. And from that, I went to vice president. And then I either had to run for president or leave. And my work was not yet done. And I was talked into running, and I did, and I won. So.
Do you remember your platform, or what was the work that was not done that you wanted to see happen?
We had a great schism with the New York Academy, who had broken off years before, who did a lot of the news, etc. And they wouldn't talk. They wouldn't talk to the last 3 presidents before me. They wouldn't do business. Soap opera had been taken off the air. It was no longer televised.
Oh, you mean the daytime Emmys?
The daytime Emmys. And we had a lot of things going on that we wanted to do and get done and keep it a strong academy. They used to describe me. How did they describe me? I wish I had put together some of the things, though, and people trying to deal with me as the president. We also
Oh,
gave...
hang on one second.
Yeah.
You're talking about the Daytime Emmy Awards.
Talking about that, well, I was saying that that was one of the things to work on, and we had a lot of our own things and issues to work on, and I wanted to take it out to the world. I wanted to take it out to the NEA, the government. I just think television is the most important thing that's happened to us in history, possibly. Of course, now it's the computer, but this was before that. And I wanted to get a message out from us, and I wanted to protect all of us, and I wanted to do an awful lot of things we ended up getting done.
What do you think the mission was?
The mission was to provide a wonderful academy, to not only produce the Emmys and make it the best show that we could possibly make it. It was to bring the industry along. The No More Drugs came out of one of my luncheons. I had Mrs. Reagan come. We did giant luncheons that were industry luncheons at the Century Plaza, which I hosted, where we had whatever the subject was on the dais. We had Cousteau, we had all of CBS, we had, it went on and on and on. It was a monthly thing that we put on. We reformed the foundation in some ways, which I think then got reformed again. But we did reform that.
What did you do for the foundation in terms of reforming it?
I can't remember at this point, but we actually added a lot of things and made.
Is that when the educational program started?
Yes, and because a lot of our archives were at UCLA, and they were claiming UCLA archives, and they were our archives as well as UCLA's archives. So we were dealing a lot with UCLA on it and trying to work that one out. And I don't know where you are now with it, but that's what we were doing. There were a lot of issues. Many issues.
And this was also the time that cable was coming to the forefront.
Cable was coming to the forefront, and everybody was horrified. And I went out and dealt with cable. I went to the cable convention as a representative from us because I knew cable was going to be there. The studios were not pleased that there was going to be cable, and now, of course, they are cable. But in those days, they were trying to keep it out.
Yeah, so cable couldn't compete for an Emmy Award, a cable-produced show, correct?
No. Well, they barely existed. HBO was very much in existence. It was not popular. They didn't do series, really. I'm not quite sure what they did do, but they were very grateful to have me there. And then on the trips I made to New York, the next thing I knew, they were happy with us again. We got the daytime soap opera back on. I suggested that it be done at Radio City, and it was done at Radio City. So all of these things got done that were not getting done.
What about the Emmy Awards themselves?
I think we had some great ones. I think my 2 years were wonderful ones. I didn't use people that had been used in the past. I brought in somebody from New York who I think did a very classy job. I don't know what else to say about it, except I think they were wonderful productions.
Okay, we're going to stop 1 more second. What do you think is the importance of the Emmy Awards?
Well, I think that everybody needs recognition for wonderful work, and I think the fans love it. I think it's also for the fans as much as anything else. It's also big business. If something wins an Emmy, it stays on longer or it gets another year. So basically it's business, but it's also artistic, and people get to vote, and you get to vote very intelligently for your peer group. No, I think it's a wonderful show. I think it should always be a wonderful show. Of course, originally it was a dinner. Everybody just went and had dinner, as was the Tonys, as was everything, until television.
And you were the first woman president of the Academy.
I was the first woman president of the Academy.
Talk a little about that.
Well, there was some machine gun nests because they weren't used to it. I wasn't part of the Good Old Boys network, and that makes it very difficult. But they all cooperated. They were all wonderful. Some of them tried to shoot me out of the water, but very unsuccessfully.
How would they try to do that? I mean, how would they?
How do they try to do that? I would get information from New York that somebody from Hollywood who was, head of this, the international whatever, had come to New York saying he would be president within a year, little things like that. So, and then of course he wasn't, and of course he didn't get to be vice president either. So it was very political. But it was fascinating once again to me. And I really began thinking, I don't know how any business gets done in the world because you're watching your backside so often. How do you ever step forward? But I think it was a wonderful tribute to women that it finally happened. And a lot of fun, but very difficult. In fact, my husband, Robert Dozier, was wonderful because he understood the business totally, was totally involved in it. And I'd come home from a meeting, I'm like, oh my God. He would take me through it. I said, I see what very well, now I understand what was going on. Which I didn't have to do very often, but it was wonderful that he knew exactly what was going on at all times because we had to stay ahead of them, So anyway, the people I met were wonderful. The industry is wonderful. I'm sorry. I love it.
What about the staff of the Academy at the time? Was it a very small
The staff was wonderful. We had to bring a new executive director in, who was Jim Loper, who ran into some trouble later on, but not during my tenure. He was absolutely wonderful. He knew everybody. He knew everybody in Washington. He had worked for PBS. He knew everybody in Hollywood. He was very useful and very pleasant to work with. And it wasn't me. I'm the one that had to invite him, but everybody approved Jim Loper when he came in.
Are you still active?
Am I still active? No, I'm not. Not from here, no.
Did you ever go to one of those past president's councils?
I did many years ago. I did indeed. I love it. But it's not here. It's not on the island, and I haven't had a chance to get back there very often.
And what do you think is your greatest achievement as president of the Television Academy at that time?
Interesting. I would say probably getting the New York Academy back in our ballpark again, doing business with them, and that was probably the biggest. That was probably the biggest thing.
Do you know why they weren't talking at that point?
I have no idea, nor why they wouldn't talk, and why it went on for years and years and years. I have no idea. But it got all rectified. I also honored the NEA, and they came out to receive, because I thought they were terribly important to the country and to the world. And everybody thought that was very strange, but I felt it was very important. I really think of it as one of our great tools in the world to show who we are and what we are, and I don't mean in a bad way, I mean in a very good way.
Another project that was very important to you was A Year in the Life.
A Year in Life I loved, with Richard Kiley, and we shot in Seattle once again, and I did the pilot once again, and I'm not sure. No, I was not signed for the series. They just put me in it. And then sent me to New York to beg and plead and have interviews with everybody living to try to get it picked up for a second year. Richard Kiley was really a New Yorker and really didn't like Hollywood, and Hollywood was having a problem with him because he didn't love them. And I think that's the only... There were two shows that Brandon Tartikoff had to choose between. He only wanted one prestigious show, and it was LA Law and A Year in the Life. We had huge response, we had big numbers, and he decided to cancel us and keep LA Law on. And so that's what happened. But it was a wonderful group of actors, wonderful producers, once again, producer-hyphenate writers. And I loved the character because she could wear jeans and she could be me and she could, look like she had no makeup. And things like that were great. Yeah,
In 1988, you joined the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I did.
How did that come about?
That came about because Gene Roddenberry asked me if I would, and I loved working with him, and I said that would be wonderful. And had some very interesting shows, did some very good work, I think. In fact, one thing I did, I think got me LA Law. It was that film that I used for them.
Do you remember what that was? What piece?
I was the 190-year-old woman, I think, whatever that was called.
A Natural Selection.
There we are. And now I look like her, which is even more frightening. But at that time, they had to put the makeup on me to make me look like that. It was a rough show to do. It was a marvelous show. I think it's well loved, I think.
Had you watched it before you got on it?
Had I watched it?
Did you watch the first season?
No, I never had. No, I had not. And Gene died during my season, and there was no reason to be there. He was the creative one. He was the genius. And Paramount, more or less, was just business. Business.
Talk about your character.
My character, a doctor, of course. I think she evolved quite interestingly. When you said you were going to be interviewing me, I looked up a few things that I wish I hadn't seen, which I'd never seen before because I never looked me up. But it was, there were some wonderful people that came through. There were some wonderful directors, writers. A couple of the actors I thought were absolutely wonderful to work with. I came in with a better salary than most of them, so I had a few problems with that as far as the people that had already been there for a year were concerned, so that was a bit of a problem because I came in right up there. So, but that doesn't bother me. I'm so used to that through the years that it really didn't bother me. And there were some interesting things I could do and get done. And it was, the whole idea of this show was so extraordinary. I really hadn't understand where Star Trek was going, and I could see where it was going. And the chief of the joint staff, was coming in with somebody carrying the red phone that he had to call, to stop incoming, whatever's, and all he wanted to do was come on the set and sit in the in the main chair. I'm like, I can't believe this. We all had to leave the set so he could come on with his whole staff and sit in the... I'm like, but it's fascinating what it meant to everyone and how important it is to everyone, and I love it for that.
I do think people would want to know, though, what you brought to the character, what you thought of the character that you played, Dr. Pulaski. Well,
first of all, I named her Catherine. I don't remember what her first name was, but I didn't like it. And he said it would be quite all right. I could call her Kate Pulaski. Okay.
Any reason that you chose that name?
I just liked it better. I can't remember what it was, probably Ursula or something. I mean, I love Ursula too, but I didn't want to be, I have no idea. I actually don't know. But Gene was happy to do that for me, so I named the Kate. He named the Pulaski. I really don't know. I don't know what I mean to those people out there. I really have no idea. I get things all the time from them, but they list many different things, not just Star Trek and not just that character. I really don't know.
Can you talk about working with a few of your fellow actors on that series? Patrick Stewart.
I was saying Patrick was fine to work with. The one I loved the most was the black guy who was just absolutely wonderful.
LeVar Burton.
Oh, he's just, no, not LeVar. LeVar I liked a lot
Michael
too.
Dorn.
Michael Dorn. Just thought he was the greatest actor to work with. All of them were good. LeVar, they're all lovely people. I have no problems with any of them. But Michael Dorn and I could really create things. We could really just take off, and fun things happened, and the tea ceremony happened, and I, as my character, I took great delight in Worf as a creature and as a whatever Worf is, and I think that came through. I think that came through very nicely. I was a little too old to be a romantic interest for the skipper, so I didn't do that. But I loved my things with Worf. I loved the one that was in England where we went.
Oh, Elementary, Dear Dad.
Love that. Absolutely love that show. That was marvelous to do, and everybody in it was great.
Brent Spiner, who played Data.
Brent was very dear.
And your character had a lot of interaction, or a lot of conflict with
Data.
him. Yeah.
It was just written in there, so we just played it. It had nothing to do with personalities at all.
Of course.
Yeah.
And why did you leave the series after one season?
I told you when Gene died, that was it. There was nothing creative about it. I didn't see, I didn't want to continue for any reason. There was no need to continue. I think there were people that didn't want me to continue, which is fine. But it turned out to be wonderful because I went straight into LA Law and had no problems of any kind with anybody. It was totally, once again, a very creative, wonderful atmosphere. When I say these things to you, it's very hard to explain to somebody who's not necessarily creative what we mean by creative. But what we mean is that every time you perform, you are getting from another human being. You are giving to another human being, and it can go left, it can go right, it can soar, it can hit the bottom, it can do whatever, but it's all between the two of you, or the four of you, or the whatever. And when that isn't allowed and everything is chick, 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 you might as well be doing anything. It's not happening anymore. There were a lot of directors coming in that really didn't know how to direct. It was Paramount saving money constantly. I didn't want to keep from working at Paramount for the rest of my life, but after Gene died, the entire office of his office was cleared out by the next morning at 7:30. Little things like that were not part of what I enjoy doing. And I had decided before that show, many years before that I was never going to do anything that was not wonderful people I knew, that I enjoyed being with. There were too many people you don't want to be with. There are too many things in life you don't need. And so I had decided, and I turned many things down to avoid jealousies and this and that's and the other thing. And I picked and I chose, and I came up almost totally correctly most of the time. So,
Did you have a reputation of doing that?
A reputation? I'd have no idea. I don't think so. I don't think anybody thinks about you. You just say, well, how did she get that job? I should have gotten that job. That's all I know. That's what people do.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned the episode on natural selection and all the makeup and everything you had to do for that. Can you want to talk a little bit about filming that episode?
About the makeup? Or
just about filming that whole episode, because I know it was an ordeal.
Well, yeah, it was many hours getting the makeup on and many hours getting the makeup off. But the worst was poor Worf. You know, can you imagine going through that every day? And I only had to do it for one show. But it's once again, that's part of what you do. You do interesting things like that, and I really don't know what to say about it. I'm trying to think if there's anything interesting makeup-wise. Michael came out of a wonderful family of makeup artists who had all the tricks and all the secrets and all the everything. So he was very, very invaluable to the show.
Michael Westmore.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So that takes us to, you said that may have had a hand in getting you onto LA Law.
Yes, I think we used that. I think they said they wanted to look at a piece of film, and I sent that in. And then when I went in to talk to them, I didn't audition. I went in to talk to them, and the part was an executive, a woman executive. And I told them what I thought a woman executive was, which is not what I think they had in mind initially. The woman executive that had always been before was one that was really an assistant to a man. And she was given a title because she was absolutely invaluable to the man, because she did most of the man's work. But she was a lackey. Sometimes she had all the secrets. And so she became somebody important because she had all the secrets. Then she never, ever gave out any of the secrets. But I felt there was a whole new woman arriving on the scene, and it was a new type of executive, and it wasn't any of those things, and that she thought on her own and did on her own and created her niche by herself. It wasn't, however she had to do it, but she did that. And they loved it. And that was it. And I walked out, and they said, we'll do it. And even a few years after, when the Museum of Broadcast in New York did a whole event about our show, and Bochco was there. Bochco had nothing to do with my part. It was David Kelly's creation. And when David Kelly left, he took his creation with him, which is one. And he's famous for creating this woman. But Bochco had nothing to do with it. But Bochco was there and Kelly wasn't there at this particular thing because Kelly had gone on to all of his wonderful things. So this was really a Bochco event. And Bochco showed a 30-minute or whatever show for the audience that didn't have me in it. And when it was over, the first questions out of the audience were mine, which made it even more interesting. But so much of this woman was, and I still believe that if she'd been a man, no one would have even noticed her. But because it was a woman doing the things that she did, that they were noticing so hugely about her. But one of the producers said to me, was sitting next to me, he said, you never really did play the part the way we wrote it. And I said, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Oh, no, it's a wonderful thing, he said. And I said, if I didn't play it the way you wrote it, where did I get the character from? And he didn't know what to say. I said, of course I got it from the script. Of course I did. It was just how I took it from the script. So it was very, very interesting. But they didn't want her to be a star. They didn't want her to be a star at all. And they couldn't stop it.
Really?
No, couldn't stop it. Nobody's supposed to be a star in a Bochco. The producers are the stars, the writers are the stars, and the actors just act.
So when you had that initial meeting, did they say this is going to be a recurring character, or was it a one-off?
Well, it was supposed to be not a recurring. I think it was going to, what I was hoping, because I was living in the Sierra Nevada at the time at 7,500 feet, I was hoping to do not every week because I couldn't commute that much, as my husband and I were living up in the Sierras. And so it was fine. It was like 9 out of, I don't know what the numbers are. Usually I would insist I'm in everything, but I didn't, particularly because of the commute. And I had to go by snowmobile to the car, dig the car out, drive down the mountain 2.5 hours, get on a plane, fly into LA, be picked up by Wardrobe, taken to my house, where I would collapse and then get to work the next morning. So it was not the easiest commute in the world. I don't know what the contract was, but they did not see it going on and on. And then they just loved it, and then it just kept growing and growing.
Had you been a fan of the show before you were on it?
No.
Had you seen it?
I hadn't. When you're working all the time, the last thing you can ever do is go watch television. I mean, it's like you get home, you've got a 14-hour day, maybe a 16-hour day. You got to get your makeup off, you got to learn your lines, you got to get something to eat, you got to get to sleep to get up to be in the chair at 6 in the morning, which is usually on location somewhere, and you've got to find that location. It was beyond the days of they could pick you up by limousine and take you somewhere. That happened a couple of times, but not very often. In my day, it was mostly you just got yourself to wherever the location. And in this case, it was at Fox, which wasn't that far away, thank goodness. So it was a good location for me. It was the closest studio to me, to where I lived.
And where did you get the inspiration for the character as you played her?
Just from all the women I'd met, from all the, the world I was in. That's where you get it. You don't have it. It's never a specific person. It's watching it all happen, and I'm always watching everything happen.
Are there things in your own life that you also pulled from?
Oh, of course, you did that too, sure. You pull it all, everything. But you have to, the reason we act is because we observe and because we feel. No more than any normal person, but we're sort of not normal. And we're a little close to insanity, some of us. It's a fine line, and so our imagination is huge. But it's the observation of people and how they sit and how they think and how they do and when they're nervous and when they're not. And but mostly it was my feeling about this new world that was about to emerge, of this new executive, which did happen and which is happening still.
You know how she got her name?
I don't know how she got her name. I had nothing to do with her name.
It seems really perfect for some reason.
Yeah.
Can you just describe the character? If someone's never seen Rosalind Shays, can you describe that character?
I find it hard to describe it because she was called the B-I-T-C-H. And I never saw her do anything B-I-T-C-H-y. I just thought she was doing whatever she had to do. I thought she had feelings. I thought she had feelings about others. I thought that I really was fascinated, and I think it just came from the fact it was a woman and not a man saying the things she said. But I could be wrong. Of course, I was the character, so it's very difficult to look from outside, and if you know what I'm saying.
Did people on the street come up to you while you were doing this role and talk to you about the character?
Often. The lawyers especially. All the lawyers watched. And then I would get articles from a law firm in Florida that had a memorial golf thing for Roz Shays after she went down the elevator shaft. And it was in the hallways. They would putt their way through the hallways and do things. I would say I get just about the same reaction, same huge group of people from all over the world, as I do from Star Trek all over the world.
Well, was there anything to people, since you were kind of the nemesis of many of the other principal characters, did you get a lot of response in that sense, a negative response, or
from the actors?
No, from people that you'd meet who wanted to talk to you about the show.
No, not at all. No, nothing, not at all. No, they just loved her for whatever reason. They loved her. Women, because she said what she thought, and
What were some of your favorite moments of the series, of that character, playing that character?
It's difficult to say. Whenever we really hit a scene perfectly, whoever it was with, and they were all wonderful. I don't remember, there was a scene with Jill Eikenberry that I just think we just soared in. There was a scene with each one of them, basically. It's when it works. That's when you're excited. And there's no specific, there's nothing, it's never what she did in the show that day or that night or that whatever. It's when the scene works, when it flies. And that happened all the time on that show. It's just wonderful.
What was the production process like?
Basically the same as any. Just set up, rehearsal, set up, go in, shoot. Lots of small scenes. Never big long scenes, as you know. I mean, I had done long scenes on things that went on for hours, and the crew would cheer and clap. So it was, but these were short. Most of them were short scenes, as you know. In, out, in, out, in, out.
Was there a lot of ad-libbing?
None. And I prided myself in never ad-libbing anyway. I did, and I learned by watching carefully. I Spy. I did one I Spy before I'd moved to Hollywood, I think. And all they did was ad-lib. And you would see an I Spy, and the guest star would just fall right in the mud trying to keep up with them ad-libbing, because you just couldn't. They were too good at it. and they were just perfect doing it. But do not enter in there. And so I would wait for a chance, and I would say my line. They would ad lib somewhere. I would wait for a little pause. I'd say my next line, and they even appreciated it. But it was a big thing to fall into, that some other actors did fall into, trying to jive it with them, which you couldn't do. They were so into sync, themselves.
How much did you know about the storylines as they were being created for your character?
Oh, you didn't know anything. No, I had no idea until I opened the script that I was going down the elevator.
What about before that, sleeping with Leland, for instance?
I didn't know about any of it. No.
So you just opened the script?
You open the script, and there it is. Oh, okay, we do that one. All right. Yeah.
Let's talk about that elevator scene.
Well, first they wanted me to go down the elevator, and I said no.
When did you find out that your character was being killed off? I mean, here's this popular character that all of a sudden will no longer exist.
Well, I had to deal with that one.
How did they tell you?
How did they tell me? They didn't tell me. I just opened the script. Yeah. So what they wanted me to do was go down the elevator, which was like a 10-foot drop, or I don't know what. Oh, no, we're going to have nice things down there. You just have to. Well, I said, no, I don't. I know that I'm not coming back on this show, but I'm not going to do that for you. And I got, once again, my Evers to come in, and she had to do it like 10 times before the director ever got it right. 10 times. He was a director from Czechoslovakia or Hungary or something. It couldn't have been nicer, but wasn't quite sure what he was doing. And it was 10 times she went down the elevator shaft. I mean, I would have had a broken neck by the time I had finished. I was very proud of her, but even she was, oh my goodness. So I had to refuse that. There were a few things I did have to refuse. You learn very fast in Hollywood how to save yourself, physically and mentally. A film I did called The Other, Tom Tryon, they wanted me to go down a staircase. I said, I don't think so. I'm not going to fall down a staircase. And the sad part was that in those days, so the sad thing is in those days, they would bring the stunt people in at 6 and have them wait all day. And I don't think the girl that did my scene going down the stairs worked until midnight that night. And how in God's name any of them survived stunt work. They had no union at the time. It wasn't under SAG at all. I just always took my hat off to them. They were just the best, absolute best.
Going back to the Good Till Last Drop episode, do you know why it was decided that Rosalind would no longer be on the show?
Yeah, I really think that David Kelly wanted to put me in Picket Fences. He was leaving. And he literally did take his character with him. And then he came up to me at the Emmys and said, would you be interested? And I said, of course I'd be interested in a second to work with you. And then I did not get hired. The network obviously disagreed with David Kelly. And interestingly and wonderfully, my cousin once removed got the job. She is much younger than I am, and she's a wonderful actress.
Who is it?
So we have to start over. The ones I know the best, I can't remember. I've been very good all day. Kathy Baker. Are we shooting?
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be archival, that whole mess? All right. Kathy Baker is my beloved. Her father is my cousin, and her grandmother was my aunt, my father's sister. So the two of us are in showbiz, so to speak, and she's just wonderful. Love her. She was here last summer with her husband doing a play at the Vineyard Playhouse, and she was terrific in it. It was such fun to go and watch her.
Okay, going back to the last that last scene.
Right.
What kind of secrecy was maintained? I mean, that was a huge.
Oh, it was
shock.
awful. It was. I had interviews. I can't tell you. I had interviews with the top interviewers in America, who were saying, "Oh my God, and when you come back next year, how do you think they're going to take the character?" And I would have to say, "I don't have a clue." And, whatever they do is, I just was wonderful, I have to tell you. Wonderful. Nobody had any idea. And hello, they had done this to me, but I still did not give it away.
How did it not get
under
out?
any circumstances? No one said a word. And
now
I even had interviews about the next season, and had to pretend I was in the next season. So,
was it done on a closed set? Was everyone sworn to secrecy? I mean, how did it
no,
not?
I don't remember any of that. The only time I was in a closed set was doing a scene with Charlton Heston. A love scene with Charlton Heston, covered up. I mean, we had covers over us, but they had a closed set. It's the only time I've ever done a closed set. So, your next question, how was it a secret? I don't know. It never got out. And I was the one that had the big interviews, that had to not let it out, and no one else did.
And what happened, the night it aired? What kind of response did you get the next day?
Screams and yells, and, it's just unbelievable. And I did a little thing I shouldn't have done, but I couldn't resist. I asked my makeup man if he had any sort of Dracula teeth or anything, and he said, yes. And so I had a coffin scene. I had to do this coffin scene. And at the end of it, when they came down and close up to me, I opened my mouth with my Dracula teeth. No, cut, we can't have this. So that was naughty of me, but I had to. Anyway, I did.
I'd like to ask you about working with the ensemble on the show, starting with Richard Dysart, who you'd worked with before.
Yeah, I had. I loved Richard. I mean, they were all wonderful. That's what I've been saying, is that they were creative and they were wonderful and fabulous actors. And David Kelly was writing our scripts, and you just can't ask for a better combination of things. And Bochco was overseeing it, who was brilliant at that. So we really had a good working, just wonderful. Yeah.
Was Rosalind's relationship with Leland Mackenzie, was that also part of the initial, when you initially came in? Or that?
No, that was a surprise. It was always a surprise. Everything we knew nothing ahead of time. Whatever it was, we had no idea where the character was going until we walked in and opened the script up, and there it was. Yeah.
What, Jimmy Smits?
Heaven. Marvelous actor. Wonderful to work with. Yeah. Just brilliant.
Alan Rations?
Alan, sweetheart.
Jill Eikenberry?
Jill, good. Very good. She and Bochco and her husband all knew each other in college. So they'd been together for years and years. But Jill was wonderful to work with, and very warm. And everybody was warm and wonderful and welcoming. There was nobody that wasn't.
Michael Tucker?
Michael, absolutely.
Corbin Burson?
Corbin was wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And who's Sue? No.
Susan Day?
Susan Day, who was she was flown over to do one of my episodes of Born Free. So I knew her from that. And then she had become a star on this. Yeah, very nice. Had grown up since I'd seen her, so amazing. She'd come over with her father because she was underage, I think, when she came over to work on Born Free.
Michelle Green?
Fabulous. Loved her. Loved them all. I mean, there's nothing I can say about any of them that isn't, they were all wonderful actors. And she was a singer. She was taken off the show too, and I'm not quite, but she went off to become, I think she did an album. Didn't she? Do you have any idea?
I don't know.
It was country music, which I'm not that much into, but I think she went off and did a country album.
And you were nominated for 2 Emmy Awards for your performance.
I was nominated twice, and that was lovely. Very kind of everyone to think about that. It's very hard for that show. I don't think anybody ever got an Emmy for that show because everything was in little tiny segments. So if, in our peer group, we are sitting watching, and if somebody has this great, long, marvelous scene, you say, oh, isn't that wonderful? And ours were all chopped, and there's no way to put them all together. And if you tried to put them all together and took out everything in between, it still wouldn't have the same flow. So I think a lot of it had to do with because they were just all too good not to have an Emmy every single year. We had an Emmy ensemble. We won the top ensemble, whatever, the best show, serious drama. And that was like getting an Emmy, wasn't it? I mean, that's the way it should be. It always is out. You can't do it on your own. You need a director, you need a producer, you need wonderful actors, you need makeup artists, you need everybody that's involved. So that's the joy of an ensemble group.
And what did you do after you were off the show?
After I was off that show, I have no idea. What did I do? I don't know. I think I studied the stock market. I skied. I became a ski bum.
I know you did a voiceover for Batman.
I did that wonderful. I loved that character. She was marvelous. I had fun for that. I did a few things. Nothing serious, nothing wonderful. We were living in the Sierras, as I said. I turned a lot of things down because I couldn't get down. The Golden Girls wanted me because they were going downhill. And they wanted me to play her sister. Who's the lead?
B. Arthur?
B. Arthur, the marvelous B. Arthur. They wanted me to come and play her sister. And I turned that down, and then they never did that.
Well, why did
they
you turn it down?
canceled it. Because I was living in the Sierras. I mean, really, literally. It was just too much. And then my husband got some cancer, and then we were dealing with that, and then we moved here, and we've been dealing with that ever since, and so it wasn't right. And now I dream of either producing something exciting or back to Broadway. So it'd be nice to end up where you started. But I have no idea what I would, and I'm not ready for it anyway. The time is not right, so I'm going to have to keep living.
You had mentioned your work with SAG.
Right. I did that for a couple of years, or 1 year possibly, after my first husband died, and was, as I say, in charge of the National Women and Minorities Group, which was very enlightening and very interesting to work on, to try to get, once again, I was never, I've always tried in my work to put a dignity, because there isn't any in life and hasn't been for years in some ways. And so I've always tried to dignify my characters regardless of who they are, their status, their money, none of it's important. The dignity of mankind is what's important, and maintaining it and never letting it go. We're too willing to tear everything down that we see. If it's really big, we want to tear it down even more. And it's not going to get us anywhere. We really need to respect our fellow man hugely. And so that was always into my acting, into my parts as much as I could. Ask me another question.
I'm going back to SAG.
So that was tough work because a lot of people were being dealt with incorrectly. And I think I even had incidents where you sign in, or they sign you in when you show up in the morning. Oh, yes, I check you off. And there was no signing out. And I would watch and watch and watch, time and time again, particularly the people that came in to do small parts. They'd be there for 12 hours with no overtime and never dare say a word because they wouldn't get a job the next day if they did say anything. And so I put into effect the fact that we had to sign in and we had to sign out. And evidently Charlton Heston had decided we were a guild and not a union, and therefore we should never sign out because we're above that. However, it wasn't working. So I had to go in. And the first time they handed me something to sign in and check out on, it was with pencil. I said, no, you make me a pen. Well, nobody else has said a word, said that. I said, bring me a pen. That's how I'm going to do it. And I was not, the producers were not terribly happy with me because I was bringing this about. There were a lot of things I did to dignify the actor that they were not pleased with. And none of them were huge, none of them were flagrant. They were just very simple things, like getting paid for the time you put in. very simple things. And indeed, people began getting paid for the time they put in. Things like that, which no one had done. It's interesting, isn't it?
It is. Really is.
And we didn't need a new contract at any point. We needed to just put the old contracts into effect, which is even scarier, and no one had. So there was a lot to work on there. But I was working, and then I started working again, and then I didn't have the time for it. But I was very happy to have been there when I was.
One of the shows, before we go to Summing Up, one of the shows that you had mentioned was Fits and Bones that you'd worked on earlier on.
Fits and Bones with the Smothers Brothers was rough for me because I still had just lost my husband, my first husband. So and it had been a sudden asbestos cancer, which is just awful. And we hadn't discovered it till near the end. It was just, so it was marvelous to be with them because they were very, very good actors. And it was short-lived. We had some good writers. We had some bad writers. We had, it was difficult for them to have a series. And it didn't fly. It didn't go. But we did one season, and it was just fine. And it was marvelous to work with them.
And the premise had something to do with television. I mean, that you were all working at a TV station.
Yeah, but I can't remember that. Yeah. But I think I was once again an executive, wasn't I? At a television station. Thank you, I thought so.
Now, how come you played so many executives and doctors?
I think I look smart. They just have no idea. I think that's the only thing. But I did. I played lots of that.
Yeah, there's also something about your enunciation, the way you speak. Have you always spoken the way you speak?
I have, yeah, I have. I have friends from childhood that will attest to it, if anybody, yeah. I think it was because my mother's family were Welsh and a lot of English. I don't know, but everybody says, where are you from? You must be from Canada or something. I said, no, just an American, just like you.
So, but did you notice it when you were younger? Did you know that you had?
No. Maybe that's why nobody liked me when I was little. No, they did like me. They just wanted to get me to do their homework for them, though.
So talk about your life today. What are your interests? What are you
I have been sailing my boat. I've been racing my boat. I won the entire season 2 seasons ago in the Herreshoff fleet.
What kind of boat do you have?
I have a Herreshoff. It's called an H12, and it's a little boat, and we have some great sailors in it, and great competition, and it's just relieves me. But I had a boat in LA too, just so I could, that's what I did, is if I wasn't working, which wasn't very often, I'd just take my boat out to sea. It was my peace and quiet. It's always been my peace and quiet. So I'm able to do that, but just for a few months here. Down there, I could do it all the time.
Yeah, why did you relocate to Martha's Vineyard?
Well, I'd grown up here. It's a great place to be. It's a beautiful island. It has good people. It has too many summer people. It's, I think there are 6,000. I'm really not sure anymore. I think it's about 6,000 in the winter and about 125,000 in the summer. So you can imagine what summers are like. But there's some good friends that come in. A few of my friends who were retiring here that I'd grown up with. I loved to play my tennis. I loved my sailing. I'm doing duplicate bridge now and going to tournaments because I'm fascinated by it. And I never had time for any of this before. And if anybody had said I was going to play bridge, I would have said, you out of your mind. Love it. Fascinated. It's infinite. It never ends, the things there are to learn. Fabulous. Love it. And you don't have to socialize. You just have to play, which is even nicer sometimes.
And you also work with dogs?
I used to breed Airedale Terriers and show many for 35 years. And now I'm just a little old for it. I still have 2 dogs. I'm still influencing it somewhat. People are calling from England to use some of my frozen sperm from my great dogs in the past to take back to England and get that breed because it got a little fuzzy for a while and they want to inject some wonderful new blood. So that's still going on, but other people are doing it. I'm not doing it.
Going back to, in terms of television and film and your work as an actress, how has the business for you changed since you started? What are you seeing that's changed?
Oh, everything's changed. It's reality television now. It's we didn't have reality television, and it changed from the beginning. From the beginning of television, the theater was written by brilliant writers and acted by brilliant people, and it was live. I did one bit of that. I did a DuPont Show of the Month, it was called, which I did out in the studios in Brooklyn. And that was fascinating for me because it was totally live, and if you had to change your costume, you had to if you went through the wrong door, you were in the shot. You went through, so that was marvelous.
Do you remember what the title was? Or the
Ambassador at Large. Oscar Homolka was in. We had like 5 stars, and Oscar Homolka would insist on stealing one of the 2 limos, and the other 4 of us would be sitting on each other in the limo to get out there and get back. Whoops, sorry. Dog barking.
That's all right. What in your career has been your proudest achievement?
My proudest achievement, I think just surviving. I think my greatest achievement has been playing multitudinous parts of every kind of person, which I chose to do deliberately so that I could play everybody and everything and stretch, and I think it happened. It's not easy to do. Doing television instead of film was not what you were supposed to do in my day. You were supposed, if you were a film actress, you did film. And then I'd see something wonderful on television and want to do that wonderful thing. And that risked a lot. It risked maybe not doing a film. When I did Born Free, they of course called to do Pink Panther 3 or something, which I couldn't, and I would have loved to have worked with him. But I couldn't do it because I was doing a television series. It was beneath some people, so to speak. It wasn't beneath me because the characters are wonderful.
Any regrets in your career?
I don't think so.
And what advice would you give to an aspiring performer today?
Learn your craft. That's all they have to do.
How?
Study, work on it, learn how to speak, learn how to walk, learn how to think, learn how to let it out of you. Too much wanting to be a star is going on, and there are no requirements for stardom.
How have you handled celebrity?
I don't have any, which is how I've handled it. I have disappeared, which is marvelous. I don't have to deal with it very often.
Did you have to at any point in your career?
Oh, always. Of course you had to. And then you had to be a star, and that's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to work very hard and love it, which I did. I adored going to work every single day. And then I wanted to go home. I didn't go to parties, and I didn't go to, I never had a publicist. I had one for a short period of time to keep me out of the papers.
Why?
Well, it was when I did #1 with Charlton Heston, and they wanted to, make me into Playboy was calling. It was just to keep all of that at bay. I don't know what else to say. Ask me something else.
Well, my last question is, how would you like to be remembered?
How would I like to be remembered? You mean as a character or as a human being?
As a human being.
As a human being?
Yes.
I guess as a hardworking, giving person that gave back. We need to all give back. We're all so lucky to have just been born where we were born to start with, and to give that to the rest of the world. I spend a lot of my time traveling throughout the world because it fascinates me and because people fascinate me. And I try to give wherever I am, whether it's Patagonia or Siberia or... I like remote places, you've noticed.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
Lovely.
Thank you.